Hello, it's Dr. Pat with Little Critters Veterinary Hospital, and we have two darling little White's tree frogs today. These little White's tree frogs are often called smiling frogs because if you look at their faces, it looks like they have a constant little smile on their face. Absolutely adorable little animals. You can see we have two different color varieties here if you compare them. And very busy and active, so we're going to try to keep them in the video for you today. White's tree frogs. These guys actually are an amphibian, as I'm sure you're aware, and often are kept in bioactive terrariums, which means a variety of substrates are put in there to create a more natural environment for them. They often will grow springtails, which are little tiny insects that they can feed on. And the important thing of a bioactive terrarium is the water dish. They will often sit in the water dish all day, they will grow bacteria in the dish, and they can develop infections from that. I actually like to put a little filter on the water dish so that we're filtering the water. It should be changed every day regardless. And very importantly, we need to use water treatment products, so a dechlorinator, because we cannot have any chlorine content on these guys on their skin. It's very dangerous. These guys actually came in today because their owner noticed that their legs were turning red. This is actually a very serious issue. If you look at the back of these legs as we're moving here, we have bright red discoloration. And this is often broken capillaries on the back of the legs and the underside of the legs. And it's called red leg disease. And this is a serious and life-threatening condition that we see in frogs very frequently. And it's often associated with bacterial infections. And again, that can be from the water. If we jump, hopefully we'll jump into the basket. The other thing you need to consider with the White's tree frogs is their diet. These particular frogs are fed on cricket. And crickets, if they're gut loaded and fed and dusted with supplements, are okay. I prefer roaches as they're healthier for them. But what we should never do is let the crickets loose in the bioactive terrarium. Crickets will come out at night and they will chew on any kind of amphibian or reptile skin, and they'll create micro trauma and damages to the skin surface that then when they're sitting in their water bowl will result in infection with secondary bacteria or invading bacteria. You should be using a container like this to put them in for feeding time. That serves two purposes. One, the crickets aren't loose and they can't be chewing and feeding on the frogs. And two, you know if your frogs are eating and you know how much they're eating, and you can track their health much more readily if they're fed in a little critter carrier. Would you believe that a frog with strong nutrition can fight off infection better than one living in even the cleanest cage? It is true. Cage cleanliness, very important. Nutrition, however, is number one. We need to make sure they're being fed healthy prey, that they're not being left in the enclosure, and that the prey are dusted with calcium. They are very prone, come back here, you can't take my hair, they're good. It is very important that the prey items being fed are dusted with calcium. I've seen a lot of frogs with very advanced metabolic bone disease. They'll often come in not being able to walk or even jump or open their mouth to eat. Clearly that is not the case with these guys. They're very active and very strong. I'm extremely hopeful for them. But caring for these reptiles in captivity should be considered a privilege. These are wild animals that we've chosen to keep as a pet, and to care for them appropriately, you should know their needs and understand them thoroughly before you decide to get them, and then continue to learn and educate yourself throughout the animal's life so we can continue to be better in how we care for them. And that's what this owner has done. She noticed a small change on the legs. She had created a recent bioactive terrarium. She didn't understand that the insects could be creating some of the problem. And she changes the water bowl every day and thought that would be enough. But again, they're sitting in their water bowl every day, so we need to circulate and filter that water and make sure it's very clean. How do we deal with red leg? We actually use a topical antibiotic because they can actually absorb antibiotics through their skin very commonly. And so they readily absorb anything through their skin, which is why we never handle them without gloves, and you shouldn't either if you own these guys. And so they're very easily medicated at home. We are going to do a fecal because a lot of them will have parasites, and we treat for any secondary stressors. And then we're making some upgrades and improvements to the water quality, to the terrarium, and how we feed them. This red leg disease can be a fatal condition, so we will follow up on these guys, but I'm hopeful for them because they're starting out in a very good position. They're still strong, they're eating, they're active. White's tree frogs come from Australia and New Guinea. They're arboreal, meaning they love to climb and clearly jump, and they thrive in humid tropical setups with both height and access to clean water being important in a cage environment. Rather than a long aquarium, you're going to use a tall terrarium, and that's very important for these little ones. And just a side note, if you hear any vocalizations in the background of this video, it's because Jasa, our wonderful videographer, got jumped on a few times. They're very social, caring, loving frogs. They wanted to visit.